Hi, OroNaz, Pastor Travis here, and I'm excited to be with Joe McCoy to share with you a ministry emphasis through the month of June. Joe is our Nazarene Missions International, or known as NMI, President. He leads a ministry here in our local church that is in partnership with our denomination around the world. He's going to be sharing, and we're going to have a little bit of dialogue to share about this ministry that we're excited about. It's called World Mission Broadcast, and we're excited to engage as a church. And it's really exciting that we've been engaged for a long time. However, you may not know so much about it, so that's the reason for this conversation.
You know, on Sunday, I as is my habit, on Sunday morning in between, I'm just flipping through various, and I refresh, and I came across Psalms 105:1, and I need to just imprint this in my brain. Here's what it says: "Give thanks to the Lord, call on His name, make known among the nations what He has done." I think that really speaks to us. Have a thankful heart. You can call on His name. But don't sit on your hands. Proclaim. Make it known to the nations. Spread the word in any way that you can. And sometimes we think that's with my mouth or with my presence. But the truth is, there are people that are translating in languages that I have never even heard the good news of the gospel, and it's changing lives out there in the jungle, out there in the desert, out there with a person watching the sheep, outside of our culture, it's out there for among the nations. And I really think, that really is a part of our responsibility in response to God's goodness to us. Yeah.
The Lord makes His plea in a pretty compelling way through the sacrifice of His people.
Yeah.
And if their ears are willing to hear, which many of them are,
yes,
that's not for us to fret over.
No.
We're to proclaim.
Yeah. And I really believe that so much of the time in our culture, we feel shut down if someone rejects what we say or our message. We don't get likes on our posts or whatever. I hear that goes on. But the truth is, God works through what people hear and see. And He moves in their hearts. It's not a rejection of me. It's a rejection of God. But keep proclaiming. Keep making known what God continues to do every day, all day. He doesn't take any breaks.
It's interesting to me. I've heard now from two former Muslims that the way that God has been revealing Himself in miraculous ways with their families, with those, they live here in the States now but still have relatives back then. And maybe we're just not aware of it here in the States, but what God is doing in Muslim friends is He reveals Himself and speaks to them through some of the very things that they are learning about the prophet of Jesus, that he's more than the prophet. And it reminded me of Jesus speaking to the disciples before he went to the cross, and we often read over this or miss this, but he said, now that I have been proclaimed to the Gentiles.
Yeah.
And that phrase, it just grabs me, because that was kind of the valve that Jesus was wanting to have take place before he went to the cross. Now, the Lord's mission, God's mission, my Father's mission, is going to be released through me. Now the Gentiles have heard.
Yeah.
And we're Gentiles.
Yep.
And so, boy, the continued work, the establishment of God's kingdom, but the continued work before the consummation, that's our invitation, our job. We get to participate in that.
Yeah.
And this Nazarene Missions broadcast is a very creative way to be able to proclaim the gospel.
And it's real interesting to me that there was vision back in the mid-1940s to start that messaging, like Radio Free Europe on the other side. But simultaneously, and proclaiming the best news ever. Not just political freedom, but internal, real freedom that is paid for by God himself.
Yeah, eternal.
I want to be God. I hear God saying, I want to be personally involved with you. And that's really the good news of the gospel. And I think that's what, in all cultures, people are looking for, that kind of connection.
Yeah.
And they sense a fellowship when they hear those broadcasts, whatever the platform they're on. I heard stories of, in the Ukraine a year ago, people fleeing, refugees everywhere, and they're able to reconnect via cell phone, via other platforms, and they're scattered all over the place, separated by miles, but they're still doing discipleship together.
Yeah.
They're still praying and getting encouragement from each other.
Yeah.
And all the more as you see the day approaching. And I believe it's the fullness of time that people are responding to whatever means they can to grasp the hope of glory.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, just our little conversation here, it seems to me that it's a very compelling and even a no-brainer for us as a local church to be able to partner with Nazarene Missions Broadcast. But maybe share a little bit about how we got connected with Nazarene Missions Broadcast and how our congregation can connect and what this month of June is all about.
We've always been connected my whole life because it had its inception back in the mid-1940s.
Wait! I thought you were born in the 19th century.
1950s.
Yeah.
52 is pretty close.
Well, no,
enough.
1800s.
I'm not that old. Some days I feel that old. Yeah, but as long as I can remember, there have been various ways that we could participate in that. So it's been there for a long time, and it's taken on new looks as time has marched on. Technology has advanced. think back to black and white TVs. And it's changed with the culture, with the technology, but the message has always been the same. We used to take up an offering once a year to support that. And then there have been other times where we've just taken it out of a budget somewhere and budgeted for it. But it strikes me that if I really think about it, it's more meaningful for me to give from my heart and not just be a budgetary line item, and I don't think about it. But when I give, I think about, okay, my imagination starts to run wild. I wonder what little boy in Africa has his cell phone and he's going to be able to hit his app and be able to hear that message. Or a little boy in Ukraine, or a little Soviet child, all China, jungles. It's all over the place. And why not?
Yeah,
why do it? I say, why not? It seems to be a no-brainer to me, and so we've organized our activity by months, and so June we'd like to highlight this a little bit and make people aware that you're a part of this. Come and join us. Do what your heart tells you to do.
For relatively small cost, I would imagine a broadcast could be cast into a closed country or into an area that doesn't have, how do I say this? Here in America, we open up our cell phone or our smart TV and we have 10,000 apps that have 100,000 movies and programs on each one of them. And but in some of these areas, there's just a handful of things to be listening to, and so the engagement's going to be fairly high. And so it is an exciting ministry to be a part of.
So much of the time we start to look at the rest of the world through our own lens. But you don't have to travel very far or look very hard to discover that the rest of the world is a little different from what our reality is. And I think that makes this an especially high value resource.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I
and
think,
all the more now, because the world is changing. It's adjusting. And there's hunger.
And there's a fertile nature in the soil in the world right now.
Yes.
We may not see necessarily some of that in our country or our context, but I would push back on that and say I sure do at times, and in certain places. But boy, the time is now to be able to engage around the world. It's always now, but we want to invite our congregation to be involved in this. Good. Thanks for being with me here and sharing some of your heart for missions and how this broadcast, Nazarene Missions broadcast, really makes an impact and how we can participate. We participate year-round, but we're focusing on it in June this month.